Learning objectives. In this chapter, the user would learn the following in detail: studio lighting, key and filler ratios, exteriors, day for night, window filters, spot and color temperature meters, key tone pegging. Advanced exposure. Introduction. Modern cameras use reflective light meters. These light meters compare tone, not color. Tone is a black and white version of your color photo scene. For instance, candy apple red will register as slightly darker than mid-tone gray, partway between black and white. The meter encourages you to expose the final photo to be mid-tone gray, or 18% gray, on average, even if the scene is much brighter, white snow, or darker, black tuxedo. Studio lighting. Studio lighting tends to use 1, 2, 3, or 4 lights with reflectors and other light modifiers, and is generally done with studio strobes rather than continuous lighting. For a studio lighting setup, you need the lights, the relevant stands and light modifiers, something to trigger them, reflectors, and a backdrop of some kind. You will also need a meter. For film, there must be a separate flash meter, but on digital cameras, you can use a camera's histogram to enable you to set the light exactly. Unless you're using Nikon CLS speed lights, you will need to set the camera to manual exposure, because all automatic exposure models will measure the ambient light and not the flash. You should set the shutter speed to your camera's maximum sync speed. Aim the sensor of the light meter at the camera. The sensor is a white dome-shaped area of the meter. It is often on a swiveling or rotating head. Hold the button on the side of the light meter down. Fire the flash on the camera. The meter will evaluate the degree of light from the flash and determine the correct aperture and shutter speed for the subject. Select the appropriate settings on the camera. The meter supplied you with aperture and shutter speed readings for correct exposure of the photograph, based on the light at the location of the subject. Input these numbers into your camera. Adjust the numbers from the light meter to achieve alternative image results. Input a higher aperture or lower f-stop number for an image that reveals more light. A lower aperture or higher f number will darken the image. You can also alter the shutter speed, which allows more light in with a slower speed and increases potential blurring of any moving things in the scene. In color lighting, thin color film placed in front of a light gives image a universal tint. In Michael Powell and Emeric Pressburger's Black Narcissus, their cinematographer Jack Cardiff got scenes lit in bold colors. Intense key light comes from the screen right in blue and orange. The theatrical lighting in blue in the concluding sequence of Nagisa Oshima's last film, Taboo, 1999. In William Wyler's Jezebel, Betty Davis is a central figure and lit by the key light from top right, by the fill light from the left, and by the backlight from slightly higher at the back. The figures in front remain rather dark, as the light does not reach them. Strong key light from left, a fill light from off-right of the camera, and the office behind the couple is lit more dimly and softly with background light. Whenever the camera position moves, the lighting positions must be rearranged. Photography with low contrast between brighter and darker areas. The most frequently used in classical Hollywood cinema. Low-key lighting creates stronger contrasts and sharper, darker shadows. The lighting is hard and fill light is lessened or switched off. Light is hard and comes from right in the shot above, the Maltese Falcon. Fill and backlight eliminated, creating a dark shadow on the wall. Low-key lighting has usually been applied to somber or mysterious scenes, common in horror films of the 30s and film noir in the 40s and 50s. Revived in the 80s in such films as Blade Runner and Rumblefish. Exteriors. Most homeowners think of curb appeal in terms of lawn maintenance or painting, but when the sun goes down, nothing makes more of an impact than your choices for outdoor lighting. Whether it's patio lights or porch lights, nothing defines the appearance of your home at dusk or dark light exterior lighting. Day for night. Day for night, also known as Nuit Américaine. American night is a name for cinematographic techniques used to simulate a night scene while filming in daylight. Some techniques use tungsten balance rather than daylight balance film stock or special blue filters. Underexposing the shot, usually in post-production, can create the illusion of darkness or moonlight. With digital post-production techniques, it is also common to add or intensify glare and light shattering from light sources that would otherwise be less pronounced in daylight, such as windows of indoor lighting, outdoor artificial lights, headlights on cars, and more. Window filter. Clear filters, also known as window glass filters or optical flats, are transparent and ideally perform no filtering of incoming light. The only use of a clear filter is to protect the front of a lens. Spot and color temperature meter. Spot meter. With spot metering, the camera will only measure a very small area of the scene, between 1 to 5% of the viewfinder area. This will typically be the very center of the scene, but some cameras allow the user to select a different off-center spot or to recompose by moving the camera after metering. The first spot meter was built by Arthur James Dalladie. Color temperature meter. Color temperature is a characteristic of visible light that measures the hue of light from a light source. Color temperatures are usually measured in Kelvin, K. Low color temperatures below 3000 K are called warm colors, red and yellowish white, while high color temperatures above 5000 K are called cool colors, bluish white. Technically, the color temperature is the temperature of an ideal black body radiator that radiates light of comparable hue to that of the light source. White balance. If you ever wonder why your otherwise awesome camera sometimes produces off-color pictures, the answer can probably be found inside your white balance settings. White balance usually needs to be adjusted every time there's a change of scene, or else those strange tones can creep into your photos. That's a pain in the neck, which is why most cameras ship with a bevy of white balance presets and why most of them default to auto white balance. Presets. The presets work most of the time, but if your camera is making the same mistake in certain situations, you may have to turn off the auto white balance setting and pick something on your own. Figuring out how to change your white balance will require a look at your camera's manual, but fortunately, once you've found the menu item, adjusting white balance to suit the scene in front of you isn't difficult. Generalized color balance. Sometimes the adjustment to keep neutrals is called white balance, and the phrase color balance refers to the adjustment that, in addition, makes other colors in a displayed image appear to have the same general appearance as the colors in an original scene. It is particularly important that neutral, gray, achromatic, white colors in a scene appear neutral in the reproduction. Hence a special case of balancing the neutral colors, sometimes gray balance, neutral balance, or white balance, is a particularly important and perhaps dominant element of color balancing. Mathematics of color balance. Color balancing is sometimes performed on a three-component image, that is RGB, using a 3x3 matrix. This type of transformation is appropriate if the image were captured using the wrong white balance setting on a digital camera or through a color filter. Scaling monitor R, G, and B. In principle, one wants to scale all relative luminances in an image so that the objects which are believed to be neutral appear so. If, say, a surface with R equals 240 was believed to be a white object, and if 255 is a count which corresponds to white, one could multiply all red values by 255 divided by 240. Doing analogously for green and blue would result, at least in theory, in a color-balanced image. In this type of transformation, the 3x3 matrix is a diagonal matrix, where R, G, and B are the color-balanced red, green, and blue components of a pixel in the image. R', G', and B' are the red, green, and blue components of the image before color balancing, and R', W, G', W, and B' W or the red, green, and blue components of a pixel, which is believed to be a white surface in the image before color balancing. Scaling X, Y, Z. If the image may be transformed into a CIA XYZ tristimulus values, the color balancing may be performed there. This has been termed as Ronne-von-Kreyers transformation. Although it has been demonstrated to offer usually poorer results than balancing in monitor RGB, it is mentioned here as a bridge to other things. Where X, Y, and Z are the color balanced tristimulus values, XW, YW, and ZW are the tristimulus values of the viewing illuminant, the white point to which the image is being transformed to conform to. X-W, Y-W, and Z-W are the tristimulus values of an object believed to be white in the uncolor-balanced image. Von Kreyers method. Johannes von Kreyers, whose theory of rods and three color-sensitive cone types in the retina has survived as a dominant explanation of color sensation for over 100 years, motivated the method of converting color to the LMS color space, representing the effective stimuli for the long, medium, and short wavelength cone types that are modeled as adapting independently. A 3x3 matrix converts RGB or XYZ to LMS, and then the three LMS primary values are scaled to balance and neutral. The color can then be converted back to the desired final color space, where L, M, and S are the color-balanced LMS cone tristimulus values. L-W, M-W, and S-W are the tristimulus values of an object believed to be white in the uncolor-balanced image, and L-, M-, and S- are the tristimulus values of a pixel in the uncolor-balanced image. Scaling camera RGB. In Viggiano's measure and using his model of Gaussian camera spectral sensitivities, most camera RGB spaces performed better than either monitor RGB or XYZ. If the camera's raw RGB values are known, one may use the 3x3 diagonal matrix. Key and filler ratios. Academy ratio equals 1.37:1, but often said to be 1.33:1. Note how framing affects balance, visual information, and relationship of on and off screen space. A. 4:3, composition well suited for a close-up. B. 16:9, loss of focus, that is, frame includes extraneous information. C. 16:9, letterboxed, face is smaller. D. 16:9, to command attention, that is, fill up the frame, face is cropped. Key tone pegging. Key tone. A spot meter is then typically used to take reflective readings to see how other objects will expose relative to the key tone that was pegged with the incident meter. Key tones are normally mid-tone. By placing them high on the exposure scale, it becomes easy to make them lighter or brighter. Thus, an image with bright midtones will have high tones which will be lighter or much too white. High key. A high key image consists primarily of light tones without dark shadows. A photograph or painting so composed features a diminished tonal range, primarily whites and light grays. High key, as a term used in describing paintings or photographs, is related to, but not the same as high key lighting in cinema or photography. White tones. When the white becomes too white, it must be toned or clipped down to keep it at an acceptable level of whiteness. There will also be areas that are very dark, and when these areas become too bright, the unwanted brightness has to be controlled. Essentially, high-key photography is all about controlling the dark tones, which are not really wanted in the first place. Overexposure. Many believe that images in high key are simply those images that have been overexposed. This is true, but it does not in any way help to create a high key image. In order to make them high key, it becomes necessary to raise the shadow tones to mid-tones, and in doing, it is possible to create fresh key tones. Conclusion. In this chapter, we have covered the following in detail: studio lighting, key and filler ratios, exteriors, day for night, window filters, spot and color temperature meters, key tone pegging.